All right, so good morning. We are going to talk about anatomy of a Node project. So as most of you know, I'm really just on like month 2 or 3 of using Node, and this is stuff that I had to figure out for myself when I was starting to use Node, like how do you actually use Node? So that's my goal today, to give you more of an idea of how Node projects are structured and what you're going to need to know in order to use Node effectively. Okay, so what is Node? So initially JavaScript was written as something that could be used in a browser. It was a language that browsers could run, and the browsers would run it on the client. So you would send a JavaScript file along with all of the other stuff for your website, and then the browser would interpret the JavaScript and run it. So it was really a way to manipulate websites. But then people wanted to be able to run JavaScript without websites as well. And that's where things like Node come in. And so Node is a runtime. Oh crap, I can't highlight. I'll have to figure that out. Node is a runtime that is like the JavaScript engine that comes with the Chrome browser. And so it will interpret your JavaScript and run it for you. So 2 ways to run JavaScript, either via a browser when you send it, or via something like Node that will run it directly on your computer. Node is event-driven and non-blocking. What does I/O stand for? Do you guys know? Input, output. Which leads to asynchronicity, which is a really great part of Node, that it is non-blocking. If you send it off to get some information from the database, then you can do other things while you're waiting for that information to come back. But it's also a somewhat frustrating part of Node, because if you want to do nothing until that information comes back from the database, you have to explicitly specify that. So coming from Python, I found that a large challenge for me with Node is dealing with the asynchronicity. And we'll talk more about that in future lectures. But things start to happen before you want them to, because Node is like, great, I can do all these things at the same time. And you're like, I don't want you to do them at the same time. I want you to wait. And so there's, for me anyway, a fair amount of energy put into asking Node to wait until it does the next thing. Yeah, Brittany.
Is like an input-output or I/O model, is that the same thing as single-threaded?
Yeah. So Node is single-threaded. It does not have multiple threads, but it also has this thing called the event loop, which means that it can wait until other events happen before it can wait until an event happens before firing off the next thing. So it is single-threaded in that it actually can't be doing multiple things at once, but it can be doing things while it waits for other things to happen. Okay, cool. The Node REPL, another acronym. What is REPL? Do you know? Read, evaluate, print loop. And so the REPL that's actually, I am quite used to using a REPL in Python just to sort of test things out, just to see how things work. So, and to start it, you just type Node. Yeah, what? Yeah, so right. So yeah, the node REPL is like if you just type Python and then you start like typing things. So Python has a REPL as well. And so let's actually go here. So if I type node, I'm in the node REPL now, that little caret, and I can do node things. If 3 is 4, console.log 3 equals 4, else console.log 3 does not equal 4. Okay, and so it ran all of that and decided to console.log 3 does not equal 4. I use this when I am working with a new method or a new function, and just to play around with it, just to see how it works and get some instant feedback on what it actually does. You can type .help, and it'll give you some options. You can also, you can get out of here by doing Control D, like dog.
You save from REPL? Does that save it as a JS file?
I think it probably is more of a text file, but let's try it. So we're back in Node. You can use the up arrow. And let's do a .save. I'll call that a conditional. I'll just say .out. Okay, so let's see what conditional .out looks like. Okay, so it just has my commands. So it looks like it is JavaScript that's runnable. Okay, cool. All right. So sometimes, often, you guys have already done this, you're going to want to run files where you've typed a bunch of JavaScript in, and you do that by running node and then the file. It's not going to give you the REPL. Instead, it's just going to run all of the stuff that you have in that file. So let's all right, so oops. All right, so now I'm in my node project, and let's add a example.js. Okay, and so in example.js, I'm going to say, why not? This is such a great example. So if 3, oh, yes. Thank you, no. Okay. So if 3 is equal to 4, console log 3. Okay. Oh, bless your heart. You keep trying. Okay. Okay, so now I can node this and it'll run like that. That's just running my file. Process.argv. Have you guys seen process.argv before? Just yesterday. Okay, so process.argv is a way of collecting any arguments you might give it on the command line. So if we go here, I'm going to say, so I'm going to say, all right, so I'm going to say console.log process.argv for now. So all I'm going to do is we're just going to see what it looks like. So now let's node example.js, and if I do it without any arguments, what data type is process.argv? It's an array. The first item is the interpreter that we're using, which is node. The second one is the full path to the script. And now if I say, notice it's picking up now peas and carrots. So if I want to say, I can say first user, oh, sorry, that's snake case, which is what you do in Python, but in JavaScript we use camel case, where we separate words with capital letters. So if I want the first user argument here, if I want peas, what index? Oh, I believe I'm not. Thank you. Bummer. So going to be just a lot of my face for the beginning of this. Thanks for the reminder. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if we have if I want to get peas, the first user argument, what index are we looking at there? Well, index 0 is going to be node. Yeah, index 1 is going to be the script, and index 2 is going to be the first user argument. Yeah.
Index of what?
Index of this process.argv array.
Okay, I see. Yes. Yeah, yes.
So, so if I go back here, the first user argument is going to be at index 2. And I can say the interpreter and script path. Right, and so forth. So, and then I can just console.log first user arg. And if we go back here, now if I run this, it just console.logs peas. Okay.
So process.argv is just the understand.
Process.argv is basically taking, it's taking this node example.js peas carrots, and the first thing in there is the interpreter. So now it's finding which node I'm using here.
Okay.
The second thing is the path to the script, which happens to be in this node project directory. The third thing is then whatever I had specified after those two things, and then the fourth thing, and so forth.
So it's just looking at that line and identifying each item?
Exactly. Okay. So if I wanted to, I could, instead, I could do console.log. hold on, let me, preferences, packages, let me just, I'm just going to turn off ESLint for now, just so that I'm not getting all this. Okay. So, and now I could say first user arg plus second user arg. And then over here, maybe I'll do this instead. I can say example.js, or sorry, node example.js 1 and 2. What's it going to console log? Yeah, and it's going to actually take those and it's going to add them. Why is adding 1 and 2 giving me 12? Because they're strings. And it's adding them as strings. If I wanted to add them as integers, I would have to parse int. Now it'll add them as integers. Coffee is gone. Time to switch to tea. Okay. Yeah. Say that again? Oh, yeah. So what's the point of having those first 2 arguments? You might be running a script from a different path, and you're going to want to know it. And the interpreter is whatever you're using as the interpreter. What's the point? I think it's mostly that it is recording whatever you have on the command line, whatever you have on the command line, and giving you access to all of it and not just the stuff that's after the script. It's not a great answer to your question. The real answer is I don't really know. Other questions?
What are instances, or what are reasons you would use process that?
Yeah, Jedi, you want to answer?
So for the to-do list, you're gonna have to give it different arguments at some point, like add, list, all those. So you're going to need some way to capture any command line arguments given after that point. So we'll probably really soon.
Yeah. So, for the to-do list, you're going to do like node tasks.js, and then you're going to say add watch lecture. And that's a way that you can get user input without having to change the script itself. Cool. All right. So up until now, we haven't been really talking about Node projects. We've been talking about, working with Node in the REPL and running individual files. But eventually, you are going to want to use Node projects. And the way you start a Node project is you do an npm init in the directory where you want to start a project. npm stands for Node Package Manager. So that's not where I want to be. So npm init. So I'm going to do that in my Node project. And when you do that, it'll give you a bunch of options. It says package name, and It decided on project because it took off the node dash in front of my directory. It's usually based on the directory name, so fine. Version, great. Description, you can put something in there. I'll be like, demo for node lecture. Entry point, I'm just going to leave that. Test command, this one is interesting. We're going to talk about testing soon. I'm probably going to lecture on testing on Monday, although I'm not positive. But yeah, so the test command, you can add a Git repository. You can add keywords. This is like you're making your own node module. Author, that's me. License, I'm not going to license this. And then it shows me what it's going to put. And I'm like, is that okay? Sure. Okay, so now, so what did that actually do? I now have a file that I didn't have before called package.json. And that package.json, we haven't talked about JSON, but JSON is a file format, JavaScript object notation. It's a file format that's basically a bunch of key value pairs. Here the key is name, the value is project. Here the key is scripts, and the value is actually another object that has key value pairs. But this is all just key value pairs. And it's describing my project, package.json. All right, what is package.json good for? It is good for recording the packages that you have installed for your project. So as you make more and more sophisticated projects, you are going to want to use JavaScript code that other people have written. You don't want to have to reinvent, you don't want to have to recreate an entire testing framework. You just want to use a testing framework that somebody else has written. Or when you start to use Express in phase 2, you don't want to recreate an entire web server framework. You just want to use something that somebody else has written. And so you're going to use Node Package Manager to install this package for your particular project. And if you use in npm install, if you use the --save or --save dev flags, it'll get saved to your package.json. And then if somebody else uses your project, they'll know what packages they need. So let's install a testing framework here. So I'm going to do npm install. And I want to save this, but testing frameworks are only useful in a development environment. If somebody's actually going to be using my project as an application, you know, because they want to use my great to-do list or whatever, they don't need the testing. Only I need the testing when I'm developing, or somebody who's co-developing with me. So that's why I'm using save dev for Mocha. And Chai is an assertion framework that will, or assertion library that will talk more about testing. You can install multiple things on the same line. And when I do that, I get this delightfully retro interface telling me what's going on. It doesn't like that I don't have a repository field in my project. We're going to talk about this lock file in a minute. But basically, it added Chai and it added Mocha. Why on earth did it add 42 packages? It looks like it just added 2. Yeah, it added dependencies for Chai and Mocha. Added backup that Chai and Mocha need. So what happened to my package.json? Notice that in dev dependencies, it added a key dev dependencies. The value is another object, and it tells me chai and mocha, and it tells me the versions, including this weird caret thing that we'll talk about in a minute. If there was something needed to actually run my project and not just for development, let's say I was making an Express app, I would just say save. You actually need Express to run the file, you know, to actually use my application, not just to develop my application, not just to work on it. So here now I'm running Express. Added 39 packages there. And now notice this one is just a dependency. It's not a dev dependency. Yeah, go ahead, Kelsey.
It's a dependency. Is it like you don't have to add it to ignore?
Ah, yeah. So we'll talk about Git in a minute. Yeah, but how all of this stuff relates to Git. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a minute. It is putting all of this stuff in my node modules directory. So if we look, I now have more things. I have node modules, which is a directory. And I have this package lock, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Node modules is where it is saving all of my, all of these modules that it's downloading. They're all getting saved in node modules. Oh, to Git ignore, yes. Yeah, you do not want to commit node modules. We'll talk about that in a minute, but yes.
Does it do that for you?
It does it for you. I did not have to make the node modules directory directly.
No, I mean it puts that in your git ignore file.
No, you have to do that yourself. I don't even have a git ignore file at this point. Yeah. Okay. So it installs all of them in the local module and in your local node modules directory, unless you use the -g flag. Sometimes you're going to want to install a module globally. For example, I do that with my ESLint module, so that I don't have to install ESLint separately in every new project. I have that installed globally. So it's not part of my project per se. It is just something in my global installation. And yeah, and so let's talk about this. Let's talk about this. So let's say that I was committing this to Git, and I was going to be working on this project in conjunction with other people who are going to be downloading it from GitHub. The node modules directory is big. It's got a ton of stuff in it. It's got all of those dependency modules that it installed, and it is really not necessary for me to commit that to Git. It's wasted space, because I'm going to remove it, remove -r, the directory and everything underneath it recursively. F means don't ask me about every file. I really just want to remove them all. All right, I have no node modules directory anymore. And this is what I would get if I was cloning this project from GitHub, because we put the node modules in our .git ignore because we didn't want to save it. So what I did was I made this project. I uploaded it to GitHub, but I did not upload the node modules, because I can now, let's say Kelsey cloned my project and you want to work on it. You have the package.json, and that's really all you need. You just have to do an npm install with no arguments, and that looks at the package.json and installs everything it needs to install. It added 81, it added all my packages and their dependencies, and now I have that node modules again. Questions about that? So node modules is just not something that goes in GitHub. It just gets recreated when somebody clones the project from the information in package.json.
So theoretically, you could do it all backwards, where you add stuff to package.json and then use npm install to create node modules.
If you wanted to do it that way, you absolutely could. Yeah, Brittany.
This lecture will be available somewhere.
It will. Okay. Yeah, although unfortunately the first part of the lecture, there is no visual, just audio because I wasn't sharing my screen. So, okay, cool. All right, let's talk about this package lock.json. The package lock.json, so it shows, it has a couple things that it shows that the package.json does not. So let's look at it. So package.json just shows the things that I've directly installed. The package lock.json, this shows all of those things that were installed as part of Mocha, Chai, or Express, all of those dependencies. And it doesn't just show them, it also shows their versions. This is information that is not contained in the package.json file. And this is useful for people to know exactly what I, the developer, am working with. Yeah, Monica.
I kind of had a question about this. So in my package.json, I'm installing any particular module at a particular version number. But package lock, I suppose, is more specific. It really locks in, like so if I might install 1.1, but I need 1.1.1, that is where the package lock comes in.
Yeah, so the package lock, so the package lock has two purposes. First of all, your package.json uses semantic versions. This actually, I have a reference in the lecture, but semantic versions are not specific versions. The caret, I believe, means at least that version.
Okay.
Right? Or no, here's greater than. There's all sorts of, there's a tilde, there's all sorts of things you can use there. And you can also use like dot, this dot star, or you can talk about major and minor versions. Yeah, oh, the caret gives you a range. And so that's in your package.json, but the package lock tells you exactly what was installed that I was using on my computer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And you should commit this to GitHub or to Git and upload it to GitHub, because that will tell people exactly what you are using, not just sort of the vague requirements that are in your package.json, but the actual versions that you were using as you were developing. No, that got made automatically for me when I did an npm install.
So just touch briefly on the things you would commit. Pretty much just everything besides your.
Yeah, everything except the node modules. And it's because the node modules can be recreated from the package.json file.
But you have to do what you did, delete the node modules directly. Reinstall
Yeah, exactly. And really, in the real world, you wouldn't be deleting the node modules directory. You would just be cloning this from from GitHub, and GitHub just wouldn't include node modules because you ignored it.
So semantic versions are not right.
Say that one more time.
Never mind. The answer is right.
Okay. All right. And so I've also given you a link to package.json official documentation.
So, yeah, because I just did that.
You didn't get a package lock? It's possible your configuration is not set to include package lock. We can talk about that. I can take a look at your computer. Yeah. You need to have your configuration set. It might be off by default. You might have to put it on. Yeah. Let's talk about NPM scripts. So there are some scripts that are standard. And so an example of a standard script is this test. This is a built-in script keyword, and often the test will be just like Mocha. We just run Mocha, but you might have some options on Mocha that you want to run. There might be something you want to do before you run Mocha, like you might want to set like an environment variable and then run Mocha. So this is a way for you to just store, first of all, how you intend your tests to be run. So again, this is communicating with other people that are working on the project. And it is also for you, because now that I have this, I can just run npm test and it'll run whatever I have in here. This is just a shell command. That's all this is. So if I say npm test, it's running exactly what I asked it to run. And then it's like, Mocha's looking for a file called test.js or a directory called test, and it's not finding it, so it's failing. But it's exactly the same thing as if I just entered that command. That's what the command Mocha does. Okay. So this is like a little shortcut. There are also, a test is a special one. You can actually give it a pre-test and a post-test script, where it'll do things before your test, it'll do things after your test. Scripts are pretty complicated, and I'm not going to get into, a lot of their capabilities here. But I do want to point something out. I'm going to say, where am I? And I'm just going to have that run the command pwd, just to tell me what my working directory is. Okay, now if it's not a built-in keyword, before I did npm test to run the test script, I can do that because test is a built-in keyword. If I have a script that's not a built-in keyword, I have to use the word run. And I have in the lecture, I have a link to what the actual keywords are. But I just made up this where am I one, so I have to use run with it. That's just sort of the way it goes. Yeah, Brittany.
Is that the same thing as an alias?
It's somewhat similar, but this is specific to npm, specific to Node. So I'm just going to run the where am I, and it gives me my working directory, which is users, presenter, source, node project. Now, what I want to emphasize is that wherever you are in the project, it is going to assume that your working directory is users, presenter, source, node project. That is just a quirk of the scripts. and it's something that's good to keep in mind. So if I make a directory, and I'm going to call this utilities, so maybe I'm going to put some utilities files in here, and I cd into utilities, and I do an npm run where am I, even if I do a pwd here, it gives me the utilities directory. If I do the npm run where am I, it gives me that top level directory. It's because whenever it runs these scripts, there's sort of an implied cd to the top level directory before it runs them.
To whatever directory.
Yeah, exactly. It's the top level of the project directory where the package.json is. This is important to remember because it can kind of mess you up sometimes, especially if you're giving relative paths. So sometimes you might have a script that says, I don't know, so maybe if I want to run I have a utility script that is, I don't know, let's say I have a utility script that is resetting the database, and that one's, so if I say reset db, and it's in a database directory, and whatever, I always have to give it the path from the top level project directory, even though I might run this from a different directory. It's a subtle point, and it might not make a lot of sense out of context now, but sometime in the future, you're going to try and run one of your scripts from a different directory, and it's going to click. Oh, that's what Bonnie meant when she said it uses the working directory as the top level directory. I just wanted to emphasize this because it's something that a lot of learners have come up and asked me about. And yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you at least have that little seed in your head that the working directory might not always be what you think when you're running NPM scripts. It's also common to give scripts names with colons. So if I have scripts that are working with the database, I might have a db.reset and a db.seed, like, you know, adding seed information to the database, and a db.clear, where it just like deletes the database, you know, something like that. Or not dot, I'm sorry, colon. And so the colon is just a way of organizing your scripts, giving your scripts kind of a little prefix. And I have to use run on this one because db::reset is not a keyword, right? That's where you have to use the run, whereas test is a keyword, so you can leave out the run.
Are there other common keywords?
There are. There's publish, if you want it. There is start and stop. There is shrink wrap. And again, like a lot of these have pre and post, where it will run the pre script, then it'll run the script, then it'll run the post script. And yeah, so you can read more about it here. But these are the sort of the keywords. Start and stop are common. Like if you're running an Express server, npm start will start your server, npm stop it. How are we doing on time? Okay. Let's talk about require. This is something I was talking about with Jedi and Celeste this morning. So require, you can get access to either a built-in module. Oh, actually, this is not what I meant. A built-in or installed module, or a custom module. I'm going to talk more about the custom module. I'll talk about that more in the next slide. But yeah, so you have built-in modules. So for example, FS for file system, that's built in. I do not need to npm install that. I can just use FS without having to install it. That's a built-in one. And I can do that in the node REPL. So if I look at my package.json, I have not installed FS. So I can just go into node and I can require FS. It gives me a bunch of stuff. And actually really what I want to do is I want to say const, and I'm going to call it FS, is require FS. And now I can do things like read from files. So if I look here, I can read file sync and like this stuff.txt file, and I give it an encoding. And I can use that from this FS that contains all of the goodies of this built-in FS module. I can also, because I'm in this project and I have installed Mocha, I can also require Mocha. Great. But I couldn't do that. Mocha's not a built-in one, so I couldn't do that if I hadn't installed it. If I go somewhere else, so here I am, I'm somewhere where Mocha is not installed, and I try and require Mocha, it's like I can't find it. It's not there.
When you say built-in, like FS is built-in, is that saying that FS is built-in to Node?
Yeah, FS is built into Node. It comes with Node, no need to install it. And oftentimes, when you actually require something, it will come with, okay, so it'll come with keys. When you require it, it's like an object. So let me go into my Node project again, where I have Mocha and Chai. And if I can say const Chai equals require Chai. This is my assertion library. And now I actually, if I look at Chai, or I can do the type of Chai. No. Chai is an object, and I can look at its keys. And here are all the things that I got when I required Chai. I got expect and should and assert, and I got should with lowercase, and I got it with uppercase too. And I have all of these things. So if I want to use that assert, I can say chai.assert, and that's a function. But let's say I know, so if I do like type of chai.assert, it's a function, right, that I can use. We'll talk more about it next week. But let's say I know that I only want to use assert. I have another option. I can say const assert equals require chai.assert, because I know that require Chai is that object of all the things that I get with Chai, and I know that it has a key called assert. So now if I say, there's that function right there. I can also just pull things that I want from that object. I can say const assert expect. Yeah, it doesn't like it because I already made a const assert and I'm trying to, so I'm going to call this const assert 2 just to make Node happy. Actually, I think I'm just going to leave Node. Do you remember how to leave the REPL?
Exit.
Yeah, .exit or control D.
Would you be able to just nullify assert?
Oh, yeah, how would I do that?
Assert equals a day.
No, I can't because assert is a constant. All right. I might be able to delete assert. Can I do that? That probably is what you would have to do, is like delete it. In any event, this would have worked anyway because I'm in a whole new namespace. So now assert and expect are both those functions. It's like picking and choosing keys. Questions on that, Kelsey? How does it know? It's because, yeah.
It's just an ending assert.
Yeah, so, yeah. What do you think would happen if I put this in here? Yeah, it's, oh, well. Yeah, okay, apparently even deleting them is no good. So let me get out of here, get back in.
Because Kelsey is undefined.
Yeah, it's like I looked for something called Kelsey and I couldn't find it. So this is pretty common without the Kelsey.
So the Kelsey, yeah, Kelsey's still being.
Kelsey has still been declared. It's just undefined. Yeah. This is just shorthand for assert equals required chai.assert, expect equals required chai.expect, and Kelsey equals required chai.Kelsey. Required chai.Kelsey, undefined.
And that just pulls those functions
into this REPL.
It's not chai.
Exactly. I'm just picking and choosing what I want. Okay. Let's so the other thing that you might want to do is pass functions and variables from file to file. When you start to make projects that are more complicated, you are going to want to separate your code into different files just for better code organization, right? If you think about the code that runs the Google website, it is not all in one file. That would be a nightmare, right? It'd be millions of lines of code in one file. So for better code organization, you split it into multiple files. But you want to be able to use things from one file in another file. And so what you do is you use this export. Export is a way of being able to require your own code rather than a module that you've installed or a built-in module. Module.exports is an object. So if I go here, actually I think I want to go in here. Okay, so I am going to, in utilities, I'm going to make a new file and I'm going to call it add.js. And I'm going to make a function. I'm going to just say function that takes a B and returns A plus B. Cool. And now I'm going to export it. This is a little weird. This is object notation, but I'm not giving it a key value pair. I'm just giving it add. Have you guys seen this shorthand before? Basically what I'm saying is I want the key to be add, the string add, and I want the value to be the variable add. This is just total shorthand. It is identical to doing this.
Specific thing, or is that an object specific?
I'm guessing it's an ES6 thing, Jedi, but I don't know for sure. I'm just guessing. All right.
Thank you for the versions.
Yes. Okay. And if I had subtract, then I could, again, this is shorthand for subtract. Subtract. Oh.
What is that saying?
This is saying, okay, so this is another thing. So I have to say, my native language is Python. Well, I don't know if I'd say native, but my strongest language is Python. And there are things about JavaScript that drive me a little crazy. So, and one of them is when you have something before the colon, it assumes it's a string and you don't have to put the quotes. So really, this is sort of the official key value thing, and it is absolutely the equivalent of
But could you kind of just talk through what the official values like?
Yeah.
What is that?
This is the key. This is saying that when I want, this is an object, module.exports, and if I ask for module.exports with the key add, it's going to give me this function add. And if I ask for module.exports with the key subtract, it's going to give me this function subtract.
I see. So when you're requiring something, you require add. You could name that add.
If I wanted to, I could say, and now I'd have to refer to it as Kelsey when I imported it. Okay, cool. So now let's make a new file. And my new file, actually, I want to specifically, I'm going to put this at the top level of my project. And I'm going to call this, I don't know, main. This is where I'm actually doing all my work. I'm calling it main.js. And I want to import add and subtract. So I can say const, remember this, add, subtract, find the things that have these keys, require, and then I have to give it the path to my file. If you're requiring something built in like FS or Mocha, or something installed like Mocha, you don't give it a path. But if you're using your own file, you have to give it the path. So it's going to be ./utilities/add.js. And now I have access to that export, the module.exports object.
Oh man.
I could also, just like I was doing with that chai, I could say add is require this dot add. Could do that too. That also works. Okay, we're running out of time, but you know, play around with that export, the export and require, so that you can move, or you can use functions from different that you've written in different files. Yeah. Okay. What's that? As long as they don't reference each other. Yeah, you can't say main requires add, and add requires main. You're just not allowed to do that.
Try that for an hour.
Okay, and so I've given you some resources. NPM, just some beginner's guide to NPM. What all those built-in modules are, like FS, you know, things that you can use without having to install them. NPM tricks to knock your wombat socks off. Who can resist? Some more details on where require looks for things. Where, you know, why you can just say require chai and it knows where to go to look for it. And then this is an article about why do you even want to use Node.js instead of Python or some other back-end language, some other language that's not interpreted in the browser. All right, cool. There was a lot in this lecture. So it is going to be recorded. I'll give you access to the slides and the recording, and feel free to ask me questions anytime.
Where would we find that?
I will post it to, I will post the link to the phase 1 channel, but you can also go to YouTube. Wow, not that. You can go to YouTube, and in YouTube, there is a Learners Guild channel. So just search for Learners Guild. There's this Learners Guild channel. Any videos that I've done will be in, so I'm looking at the playlists now. Any videos that I've done will be in Bonnie's lectures, and if it's a phase 1 lecture, it'll also be in phase 1. But I mean, there's all sorts of lectures in here. You guys like watching people talk? Treasure trove.
And what about the slides?
The slides, I will put a link in the phase 1 Slack. All right, cool. Thanks, guys. Have a good lunch. There's a farmer's market out there.
Oh, yeah.